We taught this generation 100 years of indoctrination this way. Now we'll teach this generation 100 years of indoctrination this way. We'll just toss all that history out because we don't need to have that story anymore. Now we need a new story. Now we need a story about how the climate is changing, and we have to be aware that there are seasons on the planet. We have to be aware, and that we are at fault. So now see how they shift that? We don't need Christopher Columbus and all that anymore because that story, that already worked, and the moon landing and all of those things, we'll keep kind of going with that, but then we'll kind of shift gears now to talking about how the climate has changed so drastically in so short amount of time using geoengineering and weather modification projects. But we won't talk about that because every person is polluting and we need to be aware of that. And that's the thing. As somebody just said, the quality of education has dropped immensely. Yes, and that's what the Rockefellers, as the Rockefellers took over the educational system, they took over the curriculum. And the curriculum of anybody teaching critical thinking, like we're talking about today, of just asking questions, was fired. If I was a teacher in the 1900s or in 1930s or 1950s or any of that, I would be fired because I'm teaching critical thinking. But if I repeated the narrative and said that the moon landing was correct and you guys got to believe it, then I would get paid. And this is how all of our systems work. So does the medical system. Same exact thing. If you teach natural healing remedies, you're fired. But if you teach how to poison people and you teach how to, cut people and whatever it may be, you get paid. So people lose their money and then they start to fall to this side. And somebody just asked worldwide. Yes, when you look into the whole situation of what people are taught, I see a lot of similarities that worldwide everybody is taught the same thing. You see it everywhere. It's just a different version. And even same thing with the history books. It's all of these things. When you start to look at all these different countries, they pretty much teach the same thing. They're like spiders. The Rockefellers are like spiders with a web. Have infiltrated all of these different divisions, or the Rothschilds have infiltrated all of these different divisions, and then they all kind of take over like a spider would. And then that spider starts teaching all the nonsense, and then they keep just making a web. And then that web connects down to the other teachers, and then they push the narrative. And you see it all the time. I mean, the only thing that stops the teaching and all of this nonsense that is always being programmed is homeschooling. Homeschooling is what is the counter towards all of this. And what's crazy is in the 1900s, when the Rockefellers were taking over the educational system, homeschooling was getting outlawed. Homeschooling was said to not be allowed to happen. And then what also came with homeschooling was when they started doing all the homeschooling, they were trying to outlaw all of the homeschoolers and get rid of all of the homeschooling so that they could get people into the public education system. When the kids entered the public education system, they could get a whole bunch of these. What is it, 69 of them before the age of 18 goes right into here? That was the whole point. The public education system not only is trying to lower the IQ of the person, but it's also trying to give you a whole bunch of these before you hit 18. Wonder why? Wonder why they would try to put 69 poisons into the child before the age of 18, and then also try to teach them a false, distorted reality. It's a control mechanism. Everything is a control mechanism. And that's why with homeschooling, as somebody just said, 72 of these. I didn't even know. I thought it was 69. But either way, all of these are eugenic shots. That's what they are. Eugenics. People can look into eugenics and all of that whole movement. The elimination of people who they didn't want. With these, going into this and giving you a whole bunch of those. But with that whole situation, that was the whole point of when people were homeschooling, none of these were going into the people. And also the kid or the child was taught critical thinking. Critical thinking makes a big difference because when we start asking questions, nothing adds up. It's absolutely nuts when you look at this. And even this, why is this going into people? What are you protecting them from if you're poisoning them? If you look at the ingredients of all of these, it's absolutely horrible. How is this going to make somebody better? How is that going to make them healthier? And how do we think that we can take this, put it into somebody, and expect them to be healthy? That's like if you gave somebody a bowl of poison and you tried to say, you'll be healthy after you drink it. Well, what do you mean I'll be poisoned? It doesn't make doesn't make any sense. And as Adrian said, they want a nation of workers and not thinkers. Yes, that is the whole situation with the Rockefellers. He quoted, "I do not want a nation full of thinkers. I want a nation full of workers." Because when you're not thinking and you're not using logic, you can get taken advantage of. And when we're not using critical thinking, we can get taken advantage of. And that's why with the homeschooling, what's happening is it's allowing children to see something different. And think of how much time, this is the other thing, and it's really important for people to be aware. With our public education system, think of how much time is wasted with a child their brain is absorbing things like a sponge. I think they said a child can absorb, I think they said a child can learn about like 7 languages or something like that in the first, 10 years of life. 7 languages. It is remarkable to think how much information a child can absorb if a child can learn 7 languages by the age of 10. And all they're learning instead is a bunch of nonsense that means nothing in real life, has nothing to do with real life, and is nothing to benefit them in real life. So if you think about that, it just doesn't make any sense. Now, if you take the same child and you homeschool them for the same amount of time, they would be a genius. And there's a video floating around all over social media talking about how the educational system is removing the geniuses from society. Because not only do you have fluorescent bulbs and all kinds of weird bulbs in the school, but the curriculum is not teaching any critical thinking. There's no inventing or understanding anything, and it's just memorization. And you're just memorizing things to repeat them to answer a question of A, B, C, and D. And if you're just answering those, how are you ever going to think differently? Because the answers are put in front of you. I used to get tests. I remember they would write out what's the answer, and I would write a whole paragraph of like whatever I thought of. And the teacher would tell me this answer is incorrect, but I give you at least 1 point for writing an entire paragraph about something that doesn't matter. And it was because I would just kind of make up whatever summary I felt of the book or whatever it was that I was reading, because that's what I felt, was coming out of me. But I would get an F either way. And now I believe they even said that like they're changing the grading system or something. They said they're like changing the grades so that, the percentages are lower, so that, kids can feel okay that they got like a C, which is now like a 50% instead of which used to be a 70%. And then as people are saying too, you have ChatGPT and all of those AI programs. Exactly. Everything is thinking for the child. When is the child thinking? And then as somebody said, you have to sit there and think, where is the creativity that's going to happen? And how do we have a positive society or an uplifting, inventive society if you're not taught any of these things? Even some of these books I've learned about Nikola Tesla and energy and static fields and atmospheric electricity, electroculture, mercury, all these fun things. Even languages. If you get into languages and you look into the Basques people and the Berbers and all these people and all these ancient languages where people can't even understand what they're saying, or even Hungarian language, the Hungarian language as well. People can't understand what is being said. There's certain words and certain letters and things that are just remarkable, and we should be learning about all this. It's beautiful. Or architecture, how things were built, the materials in which they were built. All the use of quartz and crystals and mica. Tons of mica. Mica is highly conductive. So tons and tons of mica. Just all these things. There's just so much that could be learned. And as just even my buddy Harris just said, electroculture really taught me shapes matter. Yeah, shapes. Even if you get into shapes and pyramids and fractals and designs and all of the different shapes and sacred geometry, there's so much to learn. But in reality, you just keep learning the same stuff. And then, like I said, they bombard you with a holiday and give you a couple days off, and then they just keep you tired. And as they keep you tired in the school system, it just keeps repeating the same narrative, and then they just kind of throw you out, and then they're like, okay, good luck. You didn't teach anybody about finance. You didn't teach anybody about how taxation is theft. You didn't teach anybody about how the whole system is rigged by the Fed. You didn't teach anybody about how BlackRock is buying up anything. You didn't teach anything about Vanguard. You didn't teach anything about what's going on with our amendments and all of how amendments and what the rights are supposed to be of the people. You didn't teach any of that stuff, but you taught them a whole bunch of nonsense for the first 18 years of their life, into the next 24 years of their life, into the next 30, and then you just kind of pop them out. And as you pop them all out, how are they supposed to survive in society? Because they haven't learned any ways of survival. They also haven't learned any critical thinking. So it makes it very challenging. And then people start having mood swings, depression, anxiety, all types of things that they don't even need to have. And then you add in all the inflation and all the other nonsense as well too. And then you just have a whole plethora of things in which people don't even need to face. But it's just wild when you get into this, and that's why, it's important for people to look into the past and be aware of this. And that's how it kind of started with the moon. Looking into the past moon cycles are probably important to look at too, because every moon cycle we've seen is very different than what we've been told. It's the same thing. Really what we have to do is unlearn a lot of the nonsense we've been told. And for example, let's look at the Amish. The Amish don't learn anything about what we're learning. They do their own thing. They have organic food. They have grass-fed food. They have raw milk. They don't pay taxes. They don't have the illnesses that people have. There's a lot of things. When we look at the Amish, they're doing it the right way. And we should connect with that. We should connect with what we're supposed to be doing. And they do a lot of homeschooling too, because they realize that our public educational system is not what it is. And I watched this one Amish guy the other day, and it was funny. And he said, I can't trust anything that the government does. And that's a great way of saying things, because if the government is in control of the educational system and every other aspect of your life, that's called tyranny. That's what that is. Tyranny. Tyranny is controlling you and not allowing you to have your freedom. And people have to be aware of that. And if the schooling system does not teach you about freedoms and revolution, then guess what? There won't be one, because then it disconnects the mind from allowing that. But if the schooling system teaches you chaos, puts you in all these frequencies, Wi-Fi lights, fed you all these artificial colors and foods and all these things, then you're going to have a lot of chaos. And then you're going to have a lot of kids who are having chaotic lives. So the best thing for any person to do, whether you're an adult or a kid, anybody who's watching this video just even today, is to really start unlearning the things that you've been taught and start reading books and start disconnecting from the nonsense you've been programmed to. It's very easy to just turn off the program and to disconnect from that and to start learning from other things and start to looking into different topics. And once you look into one, you really want to start looking into others. That's the other part. People can do a lot with not learning from the school system. People can start their own businesses. There could be a lot more entrepreneurs. There's so much creativity. I mean, there was like a 13-year-old, I think, who made like $100,000 his first year. And that was because this 13-year-old realized he could run a business and become an entrepreneur. And he even said, like, I don't know what I'm doing in school. It's not helping me with my business.